You're listening to the Two Moms, Zero Fucks podcast
Yeah, you heard that right.
with Brooke,
And Jen.
earmuff the kids.
And buckle up because this is not your mama's podcast.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Two Moms, Zero Fucks. We're so excited to have my friend Justin Harvey. He was born and raised in Orlando, graduated from UCF, and is a realtor by day, but extraordinaire by night. He is an amazing activist. He started with his activism in 2012 against Big Food, hosting the March Against Monsanto in Orlando for 6 years. He is the coordinator for We Are Change Orlando, which is a nonpartisan independent media organization comprised of journalists and activists who seek to expose the lies of our government and corporate elite. So we have a lot to talk about tonight. His activism covers, but is not limited to, GMOs, water fluoridation, 5G, vaccines, and more. Anything and everything basically about freedoms, health freedoms involving activism and stuff like that. So you can see him organizing rallies, speaking at city council meetings, which is pretty spectacular to witness.
It's awesome.
Interviewing experts and just calling out the narrative. He is the ultimate whistleblower, and I love him. And we thank you so much for joining us tonight on our podcast. We're really excited to talk to you. So without further ado, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. I feel like this is well overdue since our first introduction at our Oprah protest, right?
Yeah, so I met Justin, God, was that 2019?
That was pre-COVID, so it had to be, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a rally. Florida State was trying to mandate some really interesting bills that basically were putting vaccines on agenda for kids and stuff like that, like mandates for vaccines. And I was like, oh, we are not going to do this. And organize this rally at this 2020 vision for Oprah, like 2020 vision. Come on, really? I think Lady Gaga was there, and we were all just there peacefully protesting outside of the arena. And we got some great feedback and some not so great feedback. And it was just an experience. And that's where you and I connected. And we've been friends ever since. So.
Yep, absolutely. And that's usually that's where I meet people in this movement, usually, is doing some shenanigans like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's great to have community like that of like-minded people. I think when you are in this wheelhouse of expertise, or you have these passions and these beliefs, it can be very lonely because you're categorized in a box of conspiracy theorists or going against the grain or being crazy. I love that label, crazy.
Yeah.
But I think ever since, post-COVID, people's eyes are starting to open and they're taking the right pill now.
I love the new interpretation of how we went from conspiracy theorists to like mind readers or like future predictors. Like now we're fortune tellers.
Yeah. Watch out, world.
Yeah. For real.
Yeah, what's the quote going around? The difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth is about 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe even 6 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. So what got you started in this whole activism realm?
Yeah, like was there like a trigger or an experience like that, got you involved in like the whole Monsanto thing? Or like was it just something that you like heard or read like from a headline and then just became intrigued by?
I mean, really, my whole journey was, I don't have the typical story where I have like a family member who had cancer or a vaccine injured child, and that just like thrusted them into this community. I really was just like this normal guy, just like going through the motions. You can call me, a regular old sheeple. I watched sports. I partied sometimes. I was like, life's great. Everything's on the up and up. Government's super trustworthy. And then, a good old relative of mine, an uncle, sends me down the YouTube rabbit hole. And I was just like, just blown away. I just got into the suggested videos, and I found from the money system to our food system to why we're going to war. And I was just really upset, going from somebody who, like I said, thought everything was on the up and up. I was now like pissed. And I was like, why, how, why, how, all these questions. How do we not know? Why aren't these people telling us? I can actually remember going and asking my parents, a teacher, a police officer, different people that I knew going, what do you all know about XYZ? And then they look at me with that deer in the headlights look, and you'd go, oh wow, okay, you're off the hook. And then it would just kind of went down that line, and life was never looked at the same. I always tell people the two best decisions I ever made was turning off the mainstream news and cleaning up my diet. And those were two things I were consuming mindlessly, unknowingly. I thought Subway was healthy. I thought that, all the typical things. So things just drastically changed for me at that point. And once you clean up your mind and the gut, which was the media and the diet, it was just life was clearer, and I had a new passion. I had a new family. We all joke how we lose some friends in this journey sometimes, but we gain some incredible people, like the people I'm sitting here with today, and we start that new journey. And I'm super grateful, and I wouldn't go back to sleep under any circumstance.
Hell no.
I think ignorance is bliss sometimes. And
I am not the type of person that can unsee things. Like,
Yeah.
I can't unknow. I can't unsee. Like, that's it. Like,
Yeah, for sure. Well, Justin's like my main go-to person. If I like cannot find an answer for something, I'm like texting him in the middle of the night, and he's sending me like all the links. Like, I had this huge debate with my fiance about flat earth, and like obviously like I've never been to space, so I don't know. So I'm like, there's always that possibility. And I think once you start realizing and you pull the sheet over from your eyes, and you start realizing like nothing is what it seems. It's not what you were told. Like, there's perfectly curated context in which we were indoctrinated from the grade K, you start to question everything, and it's okay to question things. It's okay to question the narrative. It's okay to go against the grain. So like, if I can't find the answer, I just go to Justin. But for me, it was, I did have a vaccine injured child, and that's where it was for me, where I was like, okay, something's not right. And like, I don't want to ask these questions because it is so overwhelming, and there's so much opposing information, but there's so much, in favor information, and it can be so overwhelming that literally, like, I fully believe we're programmed to only be able to consume so much. And like, when you start to think of these things, and these things that can seem so out of what we've been indoctrinated with, it feels like my brain literally just automatically shuts down, you know? So I can understand why people don't want to go down this route, but I'm a firm believer of like, you got to educate yourself, and you got to be open to every possible aspect of these topics. It's important.
Yeah, I always tell people, question everything, even those things deemed unquestionable, which can kind of fall into that category you were just talking about. Another reason why, like, I think I became so passionate about the truth and getting this info out is because I realized that once people are empowered with that knowledge, they start taking action. And I saw people changing, like I said, their diet and their lifestyle and where they're voting with their dollar. And I was like, wow, that's way more effective than voting every 4 years. So I just focused on that way more than like the political side. So I tried to become like a resource for information. So like you said, when people want to know about 5G or our, hidden history or these different things, I started just creating all these databases and little notes of links and articles and all this stuff, so that eventually, I didn't know it, but they were going to start taking all that stuff down. So now we're in 2020, post 2023 now, and you have people message me and say, hey, I just got into this a couple years ago, but every time I Google vaccines, I like get sent to the WHO and the CDC, and where do I find this stuff? And like, I'm like, how is this person supposed to find the Dr. Suzanne Humphreys lecture on polio, or NVIC and Barbara Lowe Fisher and all the OGs in the game? And I'm like, this is crazy. So then it just gives you even more of a drive to get this information out to people, and the right information, because they've made it even more difficult than ever.
Right. And I even find that, and I don't know if you will agree with this, like some of the documentaries out there that we watch, I watched one on like how veganism is like the best way to live. I forget, was it What the Health? I don't remember. It was so long ago. And I remember watching it, and what they have to say is so great, and it's backed by certain science, but it's not backed by the full circumference of science. And it's like, we're putting out so much content, even on our streaming services, where it's giving you these things that sound great, but we're not taking all of the variables, you know. And even you can look up PubMed studies on vaccines or, you know, supplements and herbs and stuff like that, and we're not getting all of the variables. You're not learning the controls in certain things and how things are tested. Like if you're testing a plant in plastic, well, you might as well not be testing it at all. So like there are so many things that sound great and sound factual, but you have to look at all the other different components to it as well. So our information is just so it just frustrates me so much because it's not all accurate.
Yeah, the variable thing is crazy with everyone's different, like, oh my gosh, like we don't even know why we're not getting a certain nutrient. Is it because the soil's so depleted? Is it because the way they're hybridizing the food? Is it the pesticides or the GMOs? And or maybe it was the neighborhood that the toxic plant was dumping whatever into the river, or the vaccines, or the Wi-Fi. There's like, now we have so many variables. It's like, how do we draw it back and figure out what's the culprit? I mean, I feel like that's the game we're constantly playing.
You're a commune.
Yeah, we're gonna have to
we need a commune.
A commune or a compound? We keep saying commune. It's not a commune. We need a compound. We need like off the grid, fully functional. But I mean, that's the thing too. Like, so with this whole 5G thing, yesterday was October 4th. We just had this emergency broadcasting system. Jen and I took our kids out of school and we went to a
turned off phones at like 1:20.
We left them in the car and we went to a private beach because the beaches don't have the 5G towers. So we're like, all right, we're just going to go to the beach. The kids were a freaking nightmare in their school uniforms in the ocean,
drenched,
like, sand in their pockets.
Do you know how much sand came out of my dryer yesterday? Oh,
do you know how much sand is in the hairbrush and sitting in my sink right now? I was like, who brushed their hair full of sand? Like, it's just ridiculous. But like, so talk a little bit about the 5G and like when you started realizing like this wasn't a normal thing. Like, I know for me, I have a church right by my house. And they have this big cross. Well, guess what's in that freaking cross? It's a giant 5G tower. So they're not even making it like blatant anymore. They're hiding them.
I know. Well, it's for aesthetic purposes. That's what they'll tell us, which, to play devil's advocate, I get it. If you're the city manager and you're like, well, we want them to look pretty, let's blend them in with the trees and the church. Okay, I'll take that. But they're hiding them in cactuses. I mean, all these different things. It's like, wait a minute. Yeah, if you go out in West, you'll see them. There will be like a fake cactus. We have fake pine trees, fake oak trees. They'll just be like a metal beam in the middle. Yeah, I guess I really stumbled across that topic a little bit later. So 2015, 2016, I started getting wind of it. And I just realized that how much we didn't know about our current exposure levels from all the other 4G, 3G. People think 5G is so bad. It is, but all the other stuff's just as bad. I mean, being surrounded by all these devices for long periods of time and sleeping next to them is just so not good. And, you know, it's funny. I'm glad you bring up that emergency alert, because that was a real mess. Like, there was a lot of people freaking out and talking about some crazy stuff was going to happen. And then some of us were like,
oh, I saw an article that was like, saw people like, oh, you're going to spontaneously combust. And I think that's what gives these whole theories, like the actual factual based status, such bad cred, because it's like, oh, they're conspiracy theories. They're these bad people, and it's fear mongering. Well, yeah, you're going to have fear mongering on the full spectrum and then on the minutia as well. But the fact of the matter is this is not something we should be subjecting ourselves to, and just use
it's
like
also
logic.
Not something you want to like fuck around with either.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather use this as, you know, a push
Connection
to like
time with my
disconnect
kids.
and, you know, remember that maybe it's not such a bad idea to turn off your phone all the time and like make sure you're on airplane mode at night. Or like, last night's the first night I like unplugged my Wi-Fi. I was like, you know what? This probably shouldn't be on when we're not using it.
Yeah.
I would.
It's right there that you can highlight and be like, this was actually a good experience to have. And I think you're right. It's the key is like preparation, not paranoia. You know, I always say that I think there's an agenda to keep regular folks in fear of terrorism and viruses and all these things. But I think there's just as much of an agenda to keep us in fear from FEMA camps and the EMP and, you know, all these conspiracy theories within our conspiracy community that do make us look bad. You know, some of those theories got so outlandish that Rolling Stone puts out an article and says anti-vaxxers think that the zombie apocalypse is going to start tomorrow through the 5G network. And it's like, there we are getting, actually they are right. They're making, they're making us look bad, and that is misinformation. But that's why we have to be so careful. Just be conscious of those things. But you're right. If it got people to turn off their Wi-Fi and start looking into some of these other things, then I'm all for that. I tried to get this stopped, but for those that don't know, in Orlando and in all local towns, they stripped our authority on the matter. Like the FCC went in really early, the Federal Communications, and made a law that says that local governments can't dictate anything about 5G towers. If there's health problems, they can't take them out. They can't tell you where they go or how many go. Nothing. They give them the very minimal. Maybe let them choose the color or the style. But so then we go in and try to speak out, and the city commissioners and the mayor are like, sorry, they have our hands tied. We can't do anything about it. So the best thing I tell people is you don't want to live in line of sight. If you can see a small cell 5G tower or one of those regular big ones from your window, it's probably not a good thing. I wouldn't play in the front yard with the kids personally if that was me. I've used my meter to measure, and direct line of sight of those is worse than being actually like right under it. So you could be standing right next to one and you're actually in a better position than someone 400 feet away, because that beam is kind of coming down like this. So the person right under the pole, it's actually missing them. But everybody else in that range is getting a small dose, and it's not necessarily going to kill you instantly, but just like the fluoride, just like, all the other things that we talk about, that overexposure over long periods of time. If we know this is bad for a long time, and we know we don't stand close to the microwave, why are we building essentially microwave cities with these 5G towers?
Right. And like you said, there's nothing that we can do because it's like our government's hands are tied.
So like, when did this start though? Like how far back does this like actually go, right? Because like there's all these topics that we know about, because as adults, like we've grown into like, being aware and advocating for ourselves and opening our eyes. But like I start to now think back about a lot of things, and I'm like, is all of this just a sham? Is like everything just designed? Like, are we just fighting to stay alive here?
Yeah.
Like,
what do you mean by how far does it go back? Do you mean like the cell phone type thing, or like just the lies in general?
the lies in general?
Oh wow.
That's a good question.
We're going way back. I mean, I don't you go back as far as like the occult. I actually made a post about this recently. Is like I found the occult, that like the Illuminati, the elite, these secret societies, these families have been around for hundreds of years. So I mean, you go back like before Napoleon, the Rothschild banking families taking over and dividing Europe, and they basically own the money. They print the money, and the people that own the money lend the money to the governments. So they own the governments. So the governments are owned by the bankers, and the banking families, like I said, they could go hundreds of years. So I mean, we're talking about, there's another quote, you don't vote your way out of a 500-year conspiracy. And while I do still vote locally, I don't really do the federal thing, because I think it's, for the most part, it's selected, not elected.
Right. Yeah, that's how I feel. So you don't really believe that your vote matters. It's more so like the Electoral College who really picks the votes. And
Now I will say, these last couple years, speaking out at the council meetings, getting under the mayor's skin, seeing that I can make an impact has made me think, well, maybe I should vote against that mayor, or vote for this congressman that helped me this time or didn't help me. So like I've gotten more involved in the local process, and it's like I can feel it pulling me back to like vote for president again. But then I'm like, no, that person's still going to drop bombs unnecessarily in the Middle East. They're still going to let all these things we're talking about be completely hidden from the public. So like, what am I even really voting for? I like RFK. I like DeSantis sometimes, but are they even going to be allowed to win?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And it's like, we don't know. And then, then there comes a whole mental health aspect of the voting process of, sitting there, standing in line, bringing your kids, and, going through that whole thing, and then sitting up and waiting all night for the freaking results. And then that can end up being days and days and days. And then you're sitting there on like the knife's edge of a mental breakdown because, you're wondering if the person who you fully trust and believe is going to be
the difference.
Yeah. And I think that's what this country was founded on, was like hopes and dreams. And so they placate on that through everything, even still to this day with our elections. And I think that's really, really toxic. But you know, I remember going down the rabbit hole of the vaccine things, and then understanding the 5G and understanding how the global elitists work, and really feeling like super unsafe. And it's like I felt like I'm like turning, and I'm like, who do I trust? So for someone who is just waking up, what would you suggest to them on how to like navigate that?
Well, that's a really good point, because I totally can relate to that. You know, I had a pretty like strong like family system at home. And then I also thought I had a strong, you know, like government worldly system. And then when that one crumbled, I was like thinking to myself, it was like a reality check, like, wow, what if I didn't have the family system? Like I had nothing. And that whole, now who do you trust? You don't trust you're looking at your doctors and your government officials and the scientists, all like, oh, you guys are all just following orders and repeating that same lie that I was. So it's like, that can be worrying. And I always tell people to just educate yourself, to like empower yourself to better your life. Don't get so sucked into the, oh my gosh, look at how evil they are and look what they do in their free time and what they really want to do to us. That stuff can be dark. And like once you know, you know. I'm sure you all have experienced this. You get to a point where it's like, okay, you know, they're doing that thing again. They're evil. We know it's a lie. I don't really know what happened there, but they're probably lying about it. You know, whether it's a fire in Hawaii or a shooting at a school, you're just like, I'm not necessarily buying it. But I guess what I would tell people is to focus on the positives, like like I said, bettering your environment, your circumstances. You know, you turn off the news. Wow, your life's all of a sudden less stressful. Reach out to me or one of these two ladies here and ask us where did you get your vaccine info, or where did you get the health food info? I think just directing people to the right resources and information is the best thing that we can do. And if anyone's listening, you're looking at three of us. So
yeah. I think we live in a society that's really lazy too, because I'll get people that are like, oh, can you just tell me this? Can you tell me that? And I think if you're really looking for justice, if you're really looking for the truth, and you're looking to be a freedom fighter and a free thinker, you have to do your due diligence. You have to do your own research, because I can sit here and tell you the sky is purple and explain to you why I feel like the sky is purple. But if you're not going to back that up with your own research and your own cognitive dissonance, then you're just another sheep in a different format. So it's really important to make sure that you're doing that work. I know for me, like, I've realized that, like, I went down the QAnon tunnel. I went down the Trump train, and then hating Trump, and then being like, he's the Antichrist. Like, I went down all of that. And I think at the end of the day, for me, it's like coming back to like homeostasis, right? Coming back to baseline, and realizing that anything that feels out of vibration, like super heightened aware, and like super heightened fearful, and like super heightened excitable, like that is all false. It is all false. And I need to be like in the nucleus, in the middle part. So it's like being able to calm myself down and say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. How do I bring myself back down? And what's the truth about this? And what else do I need to learn? And kind of like reeling myself back in, because you can totally like cast the net out and just like leave it to like go float if you really wanted to. Because like you said, there's so much shit, like so much shit. We have the 5G, the UFOs, the vaccines, we have, everything. So we did a podcast episode on the vaccines and how,
specifically the COVID vaccine
and the agenda there. But can you talk a little bit about the mandates with that and what you saw going on with everything?
So yeah, in Florida, a lot of people thought we were super free and I was all good, but we had plenty of as you know, the larger cities were not good. They were just like a blue state. So we had a crazy mayor here that was mandating against our firefighters and all the county employees. And we started fighting back, and we had been protesting. I'd been educating people about vaccines. I had this group, the Florida Freedom Keepers, and all these moms ready to go. And COVID and the mandates hit, and we were like, well, we're just turning up the heat. We already have the systems in place. So we just went all out. And realized that taking the firefighters into the council meetings was extremely powerful. I had no idea that the media was going to get latched on so well. It really got under the mayor's skin. And eventually we got the governor's attention. So then we started bringing the vaccine injured in there. And we're like, well, if you're going to ignore the injured after we told you not to mandate the firefighters, I'm going to bring the injured in here and tell their stories right at this podium, put it in the public record, broadcast it on Orange County TV, and the media is going to report on it. And we just made our mayor and county commissioners' lives a living hell for over a year. I spoke in there, I think, over 20 times. I took dozens of firefighters, dozens of vaccine injured, and we just were, they couldn't ignore us. We ended up taking an inflatable elephant and called it the elephant in the room, the vaccine injured. And that was our campaign. And we parked the elephant out front of the office. And eventually, like I said, the governor jumped in and was like, we're going to, protect these firefighters. And I learned something very valuable, is that you can scream and yell all you want for years about different topics on the corner. But if you've got a bunch of firefighters behind you, all of a sudden people start listening, because who's going to turn away to the first responders, which it's kind of sad that they ignore us and the quote unquote, all the heroes get the treatment, but it's what we had to do and it worked. So, they outlawed the vaccine mandates. The mayor can no longer do lockdowns and masks and COVID policies. And then the Florida state law we got passed, which wasn't the best. A lot of controversy in Florida over it. We wanted more. We didn't quite get it, but we did outlaw the mRNA shots and any future pandemic vaccine. But we wanted the whole 9 yards. We wanted to outlaw all of them, or at least allow exemptions for all of them, because nurses looking for jobs right now in Florida, still a nightmare. People trying to get transplant, like there's still issues. And even though we got laws put in place and we got some good wins.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
I know. You should be so proud of yourself first and foremost. Yeah. I mean, it is unfortunate that we, have to rally in groups and bring out the first responders and, say like, listen, you need to listen to us and take us seriously. And it's sad that as citizens, tax-paying citizens, we can't be taken seriously and our word holds no value. But
literally, sorry, not to interrupt, but like I could literally see, like, imagine all the moms that have been marching with me for 8 years now. And then one day we walk in with the firefighters and they're like, well, what's up? I mean, the frustration, I can just feel it in them. Like, we've been screaming forever, and then they get the treatment. And it's unfortunate too, because how many of these governors and people that stood up like Governor DeSantis only did it because it was popular, because COVID and the vaccine became a political talking point. For years, right. It wasn't. You guys didn't want to talk about this. Now, I get it. You can say you didn't know. You just got the vaccines, and we were all ignorant at one point. But now is the true test. What's DeSantis talking about on the campaign trail? Just the casual mainstream talking points. He's not doing the RFK thing. I want to talk about the other vaccines. I want to talk about 5G. I want to talk about ending all the wars and who really did 9/11. No one's really talking about that, so they're losing my interest already now that COVID's over.
Right. Yeah. Well, they won't talk about that because it's not. First of all, most people can't handle that conversation, and second of all, it's not popular opinion. So it's like gather all the people, as much people as I can right now, and just appease all the masses, and let's not talk the truth, and let's say what we have to get elected. And that's the whole problem that I have with our election process.
But isn't it deeper than that? I mean, we just talked about this. Like, it's, deep state. It's the people who are controlling the money, who are controlling the talking topics, who are controlling the candidates.
So, like at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of talking heads. It's still up to the elite on what's and it goes as far back as, with the whole Pizzagate thing and the pharmaceutical companies, like all these people own everything, everything. So we're little just like amoebas on the scale, the grand scale of things, which is like frustrating, right?
It is. Like, I can talk about the encouraging things all day, but I'll be flat out honest. Like, the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing and the larger government thing is very discouraging. Like, you have people that were that literally arrested the man and put him in jail, and then they let him go. And the guy's response was, sorry, they told me he belonged to intelligence. Like, what? How do we let people get away with that? Like, why doesn't the entire FBI and CIA, all the people who don't know, quit immediately? go on strike right now. Like, that would solve it. Hey, we were pretty sure that the guys who run our agency are running a pedophile network. I think that's worth putting your foot down over, but look at how many people unfortunately got the shot because of pressure of the paycheck, societal peer pressure. That's what we're under. And those people in positions of power are not going to give up. They're clearly not going to give it up for vaccines if they're not going to give it up for children,
Right. And I think that's the bigger issue here is like protecting the children. But, they pigeonhole you into making you feel like you have no other option. Mm-hmm. And then they limit our education and our factual based data so we can't, use resources and know our rights. And I think that's one of the biggest problems is a lot of the common American citizens don't understand what their rights are to object and to say no. And we're told to trust the government. We're told to trust our doctors. But at the end of the day, the doctors work for us. We pay them. We pay our insurance. Like, no, I don't want this vaccine. You're not giving it to me. And you can't kick me out of your practice because I don't want to have the HPV vaccine at the age of 40. Mm-hmm. Sorry. It's just stupid.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's something we should bring back. We should do we should go out and make like a video of how to talk to police, how to talk to the pediatrician, because you get bullied with crazy tactics in a pediatrician's office. And then people also go out and the police will try to muscle their authority on you sometimes when people are just like, oh crap, I have to listen because they have a badge. Well, no, you don't. This is the sidewalk and I'm allowed to film here. And when you know your rights, the confidence level is just through the roof. Like when I go do these things, I've gotten so comfortable now. People say they're going to call the police on me and I get excited. I'm like, bring them. Like, I can't wait. Tell them to bring the SWAT team. I was like, because when they come, I'm going to educate you on.
The cops called on us in Sunrise. We had them called and the cops were pretty cool when we were in Sunrise, but they're like, just move along. You can't stand in the middle of the parking lot. We're like, we're not, bro. Like, calm down. But I think this is the problem is, social media plays a big part of it where you see all these, grossly blown out of proportion situations and scenarios where people are fighting and it's volatile and it's visceral and then these police officers or the people involved are going into this with their guards up, already having preconceived notions on how these things are going to play out or what, trying to go in their mind and say, all right, well, if this happens, I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. And when you are confident, when you are educated on the law, when you do know your rights, then you can be calm. With confidence comes calmness. And that's all that you need to do is just be confident in what you have to say and just stay calm. And is there a power of authority, that's severely outplayed? Yeah, but that goes on both sides of the spectrum too. So I think it is about arming people with their power and, you don't have to keep your Wi-Fi in your house if you don't want to. And it's, it's creating new habits too. Healthy habits, healthy eating habits, healthy, mental habits, going in and taking the extra 5 minutes to shut off your Wi-Fi and collect all of the electronics and stick them in a Faraday bag if that's what you want to do.
Right.
These are things, unfortunately, in the world that we live in that we have to do to stay happy and healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think those are all good pieces of advice. And I tell people just take it one step, one day at a time. You will drive yourself nuts. If I remember the first time I got into this, I was like, oh, I can never eat another GMO. I'm the leader of the March Against Monsanto. So God forbid I get caught in the store with a genetically modified, yoga mat bread or whatever it was. And I'm like, I remember driving around one day and doing like on a lunch break and doing U-turns and getting so mad. I mean, like, there's literally everything is poison. And I had to let that go because some days you're going to eat something that's not great and it's okay. And when I got over that, life's just a lot more peaceful. I had a friend tell me one time, and he gave a great speech at a conscious networking event about your mindset when you're eating. And I'll never forget this. And he's like, the person who's like very upset and angry taking down that meal, he's like, that's more unhealthy than the person who's eating the McDonald's cheeseburger and is just happy as can be and just enjoying life and living in that blissful moment. He was like, because your energy and your, everything going on is also playing a part into that meal. Like if you're chewing it and savoring it and eating it slow and being maybe thanking, the meal that you're eating, thanking everyone for it. It's just like, it's a different experience. And so now if I have to eat that slice of pizza, I'm not going to be like, oh, this slice of pizza, this is awful. This is the worst thing I've done all week. I'm going to feel awful. I might get sick from this. I can't tell anyone about this. Like, that's terrible. Might as well just be like, we're going to do this and this is going to be epic and I'm just going to devour it and it's going to be great. And that made me like really, okay, take it one day at a time.
Yeah, so you're gonna get some fluoride one day. It's okay. Listen, yeah. And you know what? You just do the best that you can, and it's in moderation. So you support your body as best as you can, and the rest, falls within. And it's not about being perfectly healthy. It's about the way your body responds. So like the thing you said with the food, it's like everything holds frequency, right? So if you're giving something already a negative frequency before it's even hitting your esophagus, then maybe that's not a good thing.
I did not give that Wendy's Junior Bacon Cheeseburger a negative vibration yesterday when I ate it. I came in here and I was like, I got Wendy's, and you know what? I loved it. It was so good. It hit the spot.
And then you know what I did? I left and I got 2 bean burritos from Taco Bell. As your holistic practitioner, that's what I did. And I was like, you know what? I was actually like I have food issues. So like I usually like get like really upset, but like I was like, I haven't had one of these in so long. And like, I was like, you know what? This is probably better than going and
Meanwhile, 2 hours before that, we were hiding out on the beach from like 5G. Yeah. And like I'm washing my strawberries and like vinegar and like baking soda, you know?
Yeah. We're going to hide from the EMFs, but we're going to go have GMOs and like genetically processed food.
But I think that you're right to have that optimism about it. Like it's, first of all, it's what you do most of the time, right? But also that experience that you're having, don't be so hard on yourself about, because
we're in an imperfect world.
Negative impacts on your body as well. Yeah. So to be able to recognize that, I think, is important.
Shifting topics, did you guys get that Canadian dust the other day? So first of all, riddle me this, Justin.
Yeah.
How can smoke from Canada, which I'm not good with numbers, but like thousands of miles away, travel down and not go up into the atmosphere and like dissipate? It traveled down all the way down to Florida.
Only that.
And then now I have bronchitis.
Not only that, it didn't go across any other U.S. state. It took the ocean and then came down to us. It wanted to see the coastal. It was wanted to see the beaches. I'm not a weatherman. I'm not a smoke and fire expert, but like I've lived in Florida my whole life. I don't think we've ever had a smoke from Canada.
No.
It was just very bizarre to me. Everyone that I talked to said it didn't really smell like a typical cloud of smoke.
It smells like electrical fire.
Yeah, but the weird thing to me is like, what a lot of people were asking me, what do you think it was then if it wasn't? And I every single person said, I do not know. And I don't even have an idea. I mean, what could have caused that much? Because it did cover like the whole state. It started up in the Northeast. It came across Central Florida. And I feel like the Fort Myers area got it worse than Miami because it moved like southwest, but it was the whole state almost.
So it was down here in Palm Beach, and I remember I called you. I was like, why is it so foggy outside? Mm-hmm. And then I realized like at noon, like the fog's not dissipating, something's up. And then someone said, oh, it was your mom, that she was like, it was a smoke thing on her.
She's like, your weather has a smoke alert. And I was like, oh, what? It's not even like we got an alert for that. No. She's like, the air quality is very unhealthy. I was like, oh.
Thing is like they were telling us where it was going to be in a couple days and which direction it's going. If that's the case, how come we weren't told this was coming? Like, hey, in a couple days your whole state's going to be pretty smoky, don't go outside. Nothing. It was like you had to check your weather app to check that. Like you said, the air quality was like through the roof, numbers it never really goes up to. And there was one little article, some Melbourne weather service that's like, yeah, it's smoke from Canada. And I'm just like,
wow.
Very strange news day, especially leading up to the emergency alert. I don't think it helped anyone's nerves in Florida.
So I'm like, now we have this blanket of toxicity over us, and then we're gonna, activate the cell towers and put all these electromagnetic forces and fields out there, and now I have like several friends who are in the doctor today because they said they can't breathe and they have bronchitis. I'm like, well, this is just interesting. And obviously you don't want to go down and like start making stuff up, but like I was completely like have not been sleeping, like my energy's been off and weird, so I'm like, I don't know. And then I'm like, well, maybe it's global warming.
I don't think so, but anything but that.
I don't think so either.
It's anything but the vax, and it's always global warming.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's your thought on this whole global warming thing and how it's playing into the campaigns and everything now?
Into what, the presidential campaign?
Yeah, I feel like this is the first year where they're really not talking. Well, maybe with the Democrats.
Democrats are not debating.
But like every year it's global. This is what we're going to do for climate changes, and they've actually debunked climate change.
I think the jig is starting to be up with that.
Well, when the 13-year-old Swedish girl's like, it's global warming, you're like, okay.
There's also
psycho,
like a lot
down.
of like, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of like documentaries that have come out like about, how we're basically like killing our land and like things can't evaporate, and it's not because of your carbon footprint, it's not because of your cars, it's because the atmosphere can't absorb the carbon dioxide that you're putting out because our land is
killing
dust.
Our trees.
No, we're killing our own land. Like,
yeah.
I think
like,
it's I think there's two reasons why. And one of them is like, I think you're right. The jig is up. There's now videos you can pop on Instagram or TikTok, and people are putting together little mashup videos of them trying to scare us in the 70s. The next ice age is coming. The world is the sea levels are Florida will be underwater by 2001. And in 1990, we're going to have no ice caps. Like, it's been 20, 30 years and these things have come and gone now. So I think that's a big problem for the narrative. And the other one is, COVID has really been a double-edged sword for, I think, the agenda for the New World Order, the Great Reset, because now you have all of these people hyper-focused on the medical industry, and they're like, well, what's the next thing they're going to use? What crisis are they going to use to take our rights away? And I think most people, especially libertarians, conservatives, non-voters, everyone except probably far left Democrats are going, they might try to take our rights away with that climate change stuff. And I don't even believe in the whole narrative either. So I think that's what we're dealing with. But it is going to be the next push, because that's exactly where all the 5G towers come into play. The smart city, the smart grid, they basically want the younger generation to think that humans are the problem and that humans are so bad that we're going to have to lock us all into tight little smart cities, close off the wilderness and the rural areas, and put us into these little, stack them and pack them. No private property, no rights, no freedom. You basically just take the little electric bus to the grocery store and to work. It's all powered by the 5G towers. That's what they want. And the social credit system is all in that, mandatory vaccines, the cards, all that. That's their goal. But I really think that they have, just like the vaccine mandates, they had a very short window to accomplish it and to convince everyone that it was the right thing to do. And I personally think their time is up. Does that mean we win? Or does that mean they just dropped the alien invasion on us? I don't know.
Well, that's it seems like that's their formula for everything. It's fire and fury, doom and gloom, fear, 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 fear. And then everyone just buys into it because nobody has the wherewithal or mental capacity to handle the fear. So it's like, yes, okay, I'm going to conform.
And I think that we forget about the ones that came before often, right? Because I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day, and he was like, do you remember the days after 9/11 and the months after 9/11? No, when we were on, there was a terrorism alert that would come on. Yeah. It was part of, are we on green today? Are we on yellow? Or are we on red?
Yeah.
So so you were literally you were scaring the shit out of people every fucking day. Oh, today's going to be okay because we're only on yellow for a terrorist alert. What happened to that?
Yeah.
They were so they were making a joke about it, and they were well, we fucking nailed that one.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we got rid of terrorism. I guess that's over now. So same thing with COVID, but I think that the difference with COVID is that it didn't, people had to dramatically change their lives and give up a lot of freedoms, and when it came to that, they were fuck that, this is our day to day. It's not just taking your shoes off at the airport, this is I'm going to lose my job, or like my kid's health, or, you know, like real day-to-day things.
Or they wouldn't let me see my parents in the hospital, you know, when they died. I think that you're right. I think that so many people are just, they were stuck at home to find the rabbit hole. And they also had a time to look at the system and go, I'm pissed at what you're doing. And it doesn't seem right. And I'm just so grateful for COVID for those reasons, because I've had so many people reach out to me and say, I would have never found this information if it wasn't for them closing the world down. I would have never found out about vaccines. I would have never started, you know, looking at these things at 9/11. It's just, so it is the silver lining to it. You know, each time they do a massive operation like that, there's always a big chunk of people that are going to wake up because of it. So let's take them and let's just keep going, you know.
Yeah. I think too, the other thing that COVID did was it brought the nuclear family back together, which I think our society and our world needed. And I think those of us that actually saw that opportunity to reconnect as a family unit and to be with our kids and realize like this is what's important, that's what opened up our eyes to like, how do we do better? How do we do better for them? How do we do better? Like, we become so disconnected. And, you know, I do believe that certain things have been created for the greater good, but for the most part, things like social media, like there was probably a good intention behind it at one point, and then it becomes this like everything gets evil or vilified, and, you know, proselytized through the government and governmental usage and lack of privacy and stuff like that. And so it's so scary. And, you know, but again, you can't live in that fear. You just kind of have to, you know, choose to do better and educate your kids and make them aware so they can continue to teach, you know, the truth and be vigilant for themselves as well. Because obviously we want to leave this world better for them, hopefully.
Yeah.
But the control, like my kids know, like, no, you're not ever going to be in the room with a doctor by yourself. If the school tries to do something, that's not going to happen. Like,
my kids are like, I'm not getting a shot.
Yeah. My body, crazy? My choice on all aspects. And, you know,
thing that we could really like get across to people is that we don't have to operate from fear or scarcity. And I think they've pushed so much of that on us. Like everything you just described, the fear, trauma-based mind control from 9/11 and COVID. You know, my family member, my grandma's going to die, or my uncle was in the towers. Like, you can't tell anyone the truth about a topic that's suffering from the trauma right there. And so that's just fear, trauma. That's their MO. But then they have this scarcity thing. And I just want to remind everyone listening that I'm pretty sure that there is no running out of oil and no running out of water. And there's more lands, possibly more continents. So think about what they're doing with scarcity. Oh, if we don't genetically modify your crops, we're going to run out. We're not going to be able to feed everyone. If we don't control the gas and charge you a lot, because we're going to run out. Or the overpopulation. Oh, we're running out of space. We're running out of water. You know, we've got to act on the climate or else everyone's going to die. It's this like fear, do what we say or else we're all going to die. And it's literally the same with every single thing they try. And I think once the younger generation realizes that, because I'm afraid these kids that haven't figured it out yet they're getting implanted that idea that humans are the problem, that we're the problem, that we can just be reduced into genderless numbers and robots and merge with the machines. And it's perfectly fine to take away our rights and lock us down because they know best. And I'm not very smart. Let the lab coat figure it out. Oh, we're the problem. We're running out of things. That when that mindset gets thrown out, oh my gosh, the kids will be so powerful and the whole narrative is done.
Yeah. Have you seen, I don't know if it's in Dubai, there's like this whole city, it's like the Mirror City, where it's like this building, it's a really, really long building, and it's like powered by 5G, and it's like this whole ecosystem within a building, it's like almost like the Vegas Strip, like it's a strip. And it has all these reflective mirrors, but it's kind of like what Justin's saying, like they're trying to create this ecosystem and this world inside of this city that's self-sustainable, and they're pitching it as like if you were to have like life on Mars, like this is how you would live, and like this is safe and it's clean and it's sanitary and no disease, no this, no that. And I'm like, on what fresh fucking earth is this okay?
It's just weird.
Like, does this really like enthrall people? Right. Like, sign me up, Batman. I want to go. No. Like, what happened to living like our ancestors, right? living off of the land. And I know in a modern world, like you can't do that, but that worked for so many reasons. And those people who say, oh, look, people got sick. Well, let's like talk about sanitation and, you know, hygiene and, you know, refrigeration now. Like, we're not supposed to have, you know, meatless meat. We're not supposed to have Bill Gates's genetically modified Beyond Burger. Like, that's not what this is about. And it's like Justin said, it's not because we don't have enough rain or that, you know, the government's putting fires on fucking islands. It's because we're trying to indoctrinate people for total population control. It started with COVID. And it's just going to spiral into other things. And until we start standing up, and that's where I'm like, when does it stop? Like, when do we as the masses start saying no? Like, put hands up, don't shoot. Like, no, you know, like just start saying no to this stuff.
Well, I mean, I think some of us have.
Just say no. No means no.
Guy, the Canadian activist, that was his slogan throughout all of COVID. That's all it takes. You know, when they tell you to, I remember walking into Whole Foods. Sir, would you like? No, thanks. Just keep moving. No. Sir, you must come back. Just keep walking. You have the power to do that. It's going to be uncomfortable sometimes, but we really have to do it. I mean, there's really no other choice. I kind of have come to the other reality that, you know, when, let's say someone's like massively like overweight or something, and they won't stop eating, and the doctor's like, listen, your heart's going to stop. You've got to stop. I'm like, oh, I can't stop. I just love bacon and cheeseburgers, whatever. And they literally keep going. They're like this Guinness Book of World Record. And then that one day they go, you're going to die in 2 weeks. Holy crap. I better get this in check. And I think society is the same way. It is going to take a 9/11 or a COVID, a whole world to shut down your sports, shut down your stock market. And that's the only way some people are going to snap out of it. I hate that it's that way. But I think it's like your back's against the wall, and that's the only way that you're going to actually make change and do something about it. We're just wired that way for some reason.
Yeah, we're wired to like wait to the last minute, and it has to be catastrophic. I mean, look at it with the hurricanes down here. People are like, which I can't with the hurricanes because they're like, oh, Category 4, and there's only like 85-mile maximum sustained winds or wind gusts. And you're like, that was not a Category 4. That was like a tropical storm. But it's the same way, you know, people just, unless they know for an infinite fact that they're going to die and like fly away like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, like they're not budging. But it's like, why aren't they like that about their rights? You know?
I mean, I get it. I feel like I did that where I lived in New Jersey before I lived in Florida, and I came here because my kids got kicked out of school for not being vaccinated. And I was like, what are we going to do to my husband? Like, do we really want to be here? Do we really want to live like this? Is like, these aren't our people. Like, it's now or never. Like, what are we going to do? And we got in the car, we packed up our apartment, and we came down here and we looked for a place to live so that our kids would have a better life and be free. But we also waited till the very last second. Like, we lived up there all through COVID, you know? We had to defy the rules.
You're not going to knock, you know, you can't knock people for circumstantial things too, like whether it's financial or family. You know, you've got, you know, single parent and your parents are the only people around to help. It's like, it's hard to tell some people to move when you're in situations like that. So I get it, but you're right. It's just like kind of making do with the best that you can and drawing like kind of our line in the sand. And that was your line in the sand. It was like, we're not sticking around any longer. Like, we're out, you know, peace. And then you're gone.
Peace.
Yeah, it's like you take our rights away once. I'm not going to let you do it again.
Exactly.
You're not going to do this to me again.
But I wish that it didn't have to be that way. You know, like I wish that it was something that like I loved where I lived. Like I could have stuck around and like fought it, you know, but it's just who's got that in them? Not a lot of people. Justin does.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's rare.
I think the thing is like you have to understand whether or not you're making an impact or not. And obviously there is power in numbers, and that's why all of these us like-minded people have to come together and we have to start talking. We can't be afraid of being shadow banned or censored on social media. We have to start sharing these things and, you know, sharing information and sharing this podcast and sharing YouTube videos without fear, without a care of being judged or ostracized from our families, because like I said, there's power in numbers. But you know, it's really hard to make a decision that's such a life altering. Like, it's not easy just to pack up your whole entire life and everything you once knew and like make that choice. You would hope that other people would stand up with you, but if you're the only one fighting that fight, then your impact isn't going to be as great as it would with people of like-minded mindsets.
Totally.
So, you know, I think it's hard because, you know, I think on every spectrum here with all of these topics, like, people are passionate about what they believe.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times your feelings aren't facts. And just because you believe something doesn't mean that it's true, even if that's what you feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's the frustrating thing about this, is that everyone believes that what they believe is gospel. And for me, that's where I have a hard time with this. So it's like, do I want to exude my energy into having conversations with people?
Right.
Or do I want to say, I'm not going to argue? And I think that's why we kind of created this podcast, because it's not like we want to put our opinions and our bias out there, but we want to have constructive conversations, even if we don't agree. But we're just not, like, the arguing has to stop. Be aware that these things are going on. Be aware that, like, there's an ulterior motive. Like Justin talked about the New World Order. If you don't know about that, you should look into it.
Yeah.
It's essentially the blueprint for our enslavement. And if you want it bullet points, it's like a one world government, a one world financial system, which is digital, a one world religion, which is probably not one that most people are going to want. One world, pretty much everything controlled in a centralized place, maybe the United Nations, the World Economic Forum. You know, these are the culprits. These are the organizations that are pushing that agenda. And they do things like 9/11 and COVID to take away our rights. People think that we have terrorists and viruses coming for us. It's my belief, and a lot of people, that over time that they engineer these things so that when we get scared and go, please help, they come in with the so-called solution, which really takes more of our rights away and builds us into this digital prison. That's why we get patted down at the airport. That's why we have mandatory vaccine policies in places, just slowly taking our rights away. It's like the boiling frog, and they can't do it overnight because we have guns, we have willpower. But if they do it slowly and chip away at it, and people think it's justified to keep them safe, then they will agree. And the other way that they do it is with the convenience. And when you talk about that thing in Saudi Arabia, it's called The Line. If anyone wants to look it up, that city, it's like a long line, and that's why it's called that. They're basically selling you the final stage of your enslavement as convenience. So it's like, oh, this is way cleaner, like you said, more environmentally this and that, and cost effective. And that's the world they want to create for us. And that's the New World Order, the Great Reset, the Agenda 2030. These are all interchangeable terms. And you don't really have to even call it a theory, really, because the people in charge have written books about it and made quotes about it. So they're very open. You know, David Rockefeller, Jacob Rothschild, names like that. You look those names up and you'll find Henry Kissinger. I even made a tweet recently. It was like, if you're constantly following the 24/7 fear, distractions, and psyops, yet you can't tell me who Henry Kissinger is, then they still have you where they want you, because this is the man that plans things like 9/11 and picks your next president. And while we're fighting over the little things and the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa and Donald Trump, they are busy creating that digital prison that they want to put us all in under the guise of saving the environment. So that may be long-winded, but that's essentially the New World Order. And it's on our doorstep.
Do you think there was something yesterday that was bigger than what was actually happening? Bigger than the emergency alert system as a distraction?
I think they were trying to see how many people would shut their phones off. I think they were trying to see if we were trackable. I think it was a whole data collection type of situation.
Leaning towards that as well. I think there's, like most of their things, there's probably a little 2 or 3 things they accomplished. Okay, let's see how many people turn it off. Let's see how many people pay attention to this. How many people didn't even know it was going on? How many people successfully averted the alert? You know, I think Russia did one too. So when they announce in the news, Russia and America are doing one, that just subconsciously implants Cold War, World War III. Like, you're just continuing to scare people and drum up this nuclear war thing. So there's probably a lot of things they checked off, like you said, but I don't think they activated the sleeper cells in the vaccinated. What's crazy is do I think they have the potential to send out a frequency to make people irritable or go crazy or maybe turn into zombies? I'm not putting it past them, but I just never think they would announce it. All the things that they've done to us have always happened as a big surprise. 9/11, COVID.
I don't think they would announce something like that. I think they would put something into the water or like put some sort of activation into.
Why is there something in the water?
Oh, you mean the fluoride that's eating at our brain? Like, let's not even talk about that. Like, that's a whole. My ex just took my kids to the dentist, and I was like, I will take them to the dentist. He took them. I was like, no fluoride. Like, oh, that's a whole nother thing that just aggravates me. But it does. There's so many things that start with stuff like putting fluoride in the drinking water and putting chlorine in water fountains and stuff like that, because it makes us dumber. It genetically modifies us as human beings. And we're wondering why we can't comprehend things and why mental illness is on the rise and, autism and all these things. And then when we're injecting ourselves with adjuvants that don't work with our body, it's like a recipe for disaster. So it's hard to believe that like our government would carefully and methodically plan all these things because they're so precise, right? And it's like almost ingenious if you think about it. But that's and this has happened for centuries and centuries and centuries. Like this wasn't like a thought up plan overnight. Like this has been methodically planned out by the elite. You talk about 9/11 a lot, and there's the, labeled as a conspiracy is how 9/11 was this whole planned attack, and it wasn't a terrorist thing. It was an inside job, which there's so much resources out there and so many videos. Like if you watch this, you'll see like you can't blow through steel like the way that and even my ex, because he's a contractor, said the way that the buildings came down, they wouldn't if they were impacted like that structurally, they wouldn't have come down the way that they come down. They would have fell a different way. And the way that they came down, he's like, those were bombs going off in those buildings. And then what about building 7? Like,
yeah.
You ever heard the Donald Trump interview on 9/11, the day of? So it's a pretty interesting because I think he gave an honest, candid interview of his assessment, and he probably got a phone call afterwards. But they asked him on a radio interview, they said, did you see what happened? Because, he's got Trump Tower and he's in New York a lot. And he was like, yeah, I've been down here, all day. And it's just incredible to me. He goes, I just know that there were bombs used because there's no way that an airplane could have sliced through a steel building like that. He goes, I know engineering and I know buildings in New York. And he goes, it was the strongest steel building ever built. He goes, you have no idea how thick those steel beams are. It was all the way around. And he goes, whatever happened, there was definitely explosives used. And that interview was never aired again. It's only been saved and, shared on social media, and he's never spoke about it again. But anybody who knows airplanes and buildings that isn't completely like utterly dependent on the government, they probably thought there was something wrong there, because it was building, like you said, buildings don't collapse like that, especially ones that don't get hit by airplanes. Building 7.
Yeah. And then there's the whole like, okay, well, the one plane that was supposed to hit the Pentagon and then landed in the field, and then there's no airplane in the Pentagon, but there's a gaping hole in it. Like, come on. Like, it's just, and then if you research all the things that were going on that day for the like government funding and
leading
finances,
up to
and
it, I just watched this. It's like the special ops on like Netflix or something, and like the things that were happening in like the year before that, leading up to it. They knew.
Yeah,
it was planned.
They absolutely did know.
Covering their tracks, because they'll go on TV 3 or 4 times and say, we had no idea that anyone would ever fly airplanes into buildings. Meanwhile, the military was literally running drills the same day for hijacking airplanes into buildings. And I don't know if they just, it was still not 2001. When it comes to some of this stuff, I truly don't think that they thought we were going to be able to like save these clips and replay them and put them on YouTube. Like, they didn't know what YouTube was or gonna be. And now that I can go find Joe Biden or George Bush saying whatever back in 1985 now on C-SPAN is like really biting the narrative in the butt, because People who have either faked their death or done certain strange things, we can look them up now and find them. So I think the internet has been one of our greatest blessings.
Yeah, it is a blessing and a curse. And I think that's probably their curse, is that we can go back and find this stuff, unless it's not under the Mandela effect. So other than that, I think we're good. Because I swear to God, Richard Simmons had a headband. I'm just saying. He always had a headband.
It used to be Brags. And it used to be Brags.
Yeah.
Brag.
Yeah.
Had an S.
I can't with that stuff. Well, we appreciate you. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you one more.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
What is your all's take on the germ and terrain theory? Have you gone down that, and like, what's your take on it?
I don't know about this.
Yeah, I don't think I enlighten us. Germ and terrain.
Does the COVID virus exist, and do we spread viruses contagiously from person to person like we're taught?
Okay, so I believe, my belief is that this is a man-made, manufactured virus that is a hybrid. Coronavirus is the common cold, right? It's been around for fucking ever. I believe that we have labs that our government funds and Bill Gates funds, and that hybrid viruses, so we can manufacture vaccines. And I would like to think that it's for science and research, but I don't believe that's what it's for. And I believe this was intentionally let out. So yes, I do think it's a real hybrided coronavirus virus. Do I think it's as bad as they say it is? Absolutely not. I think it's really detrimental to be able to slap a statistic on something without the data. And you know, when we really researched it, it was like 1%, less than 0.1% chance of mortality rate with the COVID thing. We do not spread viruses the way that they're saying that coronavirus spread. And viruses do not mutate the way that they're saying coronavirus mutates. When viruses do mutate, like the flu and stuff like that, it is lesser and weaker. So even like with the flu situation, I don't think that we have all these different variations of the flu that are getting stronger and worse and worse. I feel like the government is releasing these flu viruses. You know, virus can't live on a surface, depending on what type of virus it is, for more than like 48, 72 hours. So you're telling me that this thing just floating around in the air and me talking to you like this, you're gonna catch it, or if I touch you, you're gonna catch it? Like,
so wait, so Justin, are you saying that whatever you're about to say challenges the idea that if I cough, I will get Brooke sick, just in a general sense?
Generally, and just for the record, I am undecided on this entire thing. Okay. A lot of things I have a pretty strong opinion on. I have not done enough work on this, but I have enough people that I really trust their research and their judgment that feel very strongly about it. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. They don't believe that contagion in the way that we're taught exists. They think the reason we get sick are for other reasons, a whole host of them, which we all agree on anyway. I think at the end of the day, when you explain both ideas, a lot of people will say, well, why can't both exist? Which is what a lot of people go to. But then the people who are very passionate about it on the terrain theory side will say, you're not there yet. Now, I agree with everything you said. I'm pretty sure that this was engineered and man-made and released. And I also believe that it's very likely that many of the other viruses, like the AIDS virus, were also created. But these folks will take it another step further and say that the entire idea of it is a complete hoax. Like, for instance, you know, you can't really find anybody with AIDS, and they will say that most people that got them, they just diagnosed them incorrectly, sort of like we did with COVID, saying everything was COVID when it wasn't. Magic Johnson is in on it, things like that. But I haven't done the work, but it is super interesting to me because you have situations where, let's say a doctor or a nurse is around sick people all day long, right? And there's all these different viruses, and then they never catch it. Not never, but you know what I mean? They could be around.
I think that your blood type too has a big part in how your your body's going to react to things. So we were seeing people with O positive blood types that were catching COVID or didn't know they had COVID that were asymptomatic but testing positive, or having very small or minute symptoms, acute symptoms. So I think there's a lot of variables that play into it. Now with the whole AIDS thing, it's obviously, that's like a virus. It's a blood disorder too. So it's like, is it AIDS or HIV? Because I know people that have had HIV that got them from blood transfusions in hospitals, and I don't know. I think that's like a whole like mind blown.
Well, I have so many questions. So if it's not contagion, then what is the spread? Like, what is the culprit?
So, and I'm honestly not the best person to give the best answer for that, but I'll just kind of throw you down the area that I think they would take you. Is more of like, start off with the laundry list of things that do make us sick, from our diet and our thoughts and our environment and everything else that we're dealing with.
Stress.
And then I don't know if that's coupled with the fact of like your body and your cells or your energy picking up on the fact that someone next to you is detoxing. And now your body's like, oh, that's right, I need to detox too. So then you get sick, and then you go home and go, damn, I shouldn't have been around so-and-so who was coughing earlier, when it really wasn't the coughing. I guess there's some books and there's some studies done about where they tried to prove contagion and they couldn't do it. But again,
it's like cellular intelligence. It's like a cellular intelligence.
And this is where I don't want to get quoted or say it or butcher it, but
I listened to this doctor, Dr. Zach Bush, and he talks a lot about stuff like that, and it's all about like your biome, like breathe your biome is one of his like theories. But there was like one interview that he did it was a really long time ago. And it was like, I was home during COVID. I used to listen to him every night because I just loved the way that he spoke. And he speaks about like a future where like your body is actually like speaking to nature and nature speaking back to it. So I feel like
Wouldn't that be like frequency?
Well, frequency and like cellular intelligence, that your cells actually recognize like my cells and they're speaking to each other. Do you think
that's why girls have their like menstrual cycles sync up too? Like maybe that could be something with it.
Maybe.
I mean, I definitely think that we could have contagion, but I don't think it would be natural. I think contagion in the sense of viral, like worldwide pandemic, would be something that would have to be implanted, airborne, sprayed in our air, put in our water, put on our food. Like, I don't believe that it's something that can just happen.
Yeah, and the reason I actually brought it up is because it triggered it when you all brought up the water. Putting something in the water, like they might spike the water.
Chemical warfare.
And I think it's Dr. Brian Artis might believe that they spiked the water. And I know someone who thinks that they did it through the air.
That's what I think.
Spread it to everyone. And just to like, the reason I even bring this up is what people think is happening is that they created an entire false premise about contagion and the way that works, spreading it in our bodies, to create almost an entire century of fake pandemics, all the way back to the swine flu, to all these things, so that they can have control, and that they, it's kind of like, if our entire understanding is upside down about our bodies and medicine and the way that all this works, much easier to control, much easier to hook on pharmaceuticals, much easier to keep not from healing yourself and figuring out how this incredibly God-perfected system works. That's what people think is happening. But again, you do get back to the same frequently asked questions like, well, okay, my best friend from growing up has no taste or smell to this day. He got COVID, he has no taste or smell. And I would ask my friends with the terrain theory and say, well, what's going on there? And they just would say, I don't know what their answer would be, but I guess it would be that we've placeboed ourselves. Now, we know how strong the placebo is, so I guess it's possible. Oh my gosh, the news is saying I'm going to get COVID, pandemic, COVID, loss of taste, loss of smell, loss of taste, loss of smell. Then when you get sick, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my taste and smell. Then he loses it. Now, he's got some other bad variables, let's say poor diet, smokes cigarettes, and does something else, messes with your nasal and your other things, and now he's placeboed, and his variables have created a scenario where he literally doesn't have taste and smell. COVID is completely real to him. It's real to other people, because now that experience is real, and we don't necessarily have proof of the virus yet.
So your body is hosting that experience.
The virus has never been isolated, ever, and that the method in which way, and they'll say no, it hasn't. So again, I'm not smart enough to go down that rabbit hole that far, but I do like to present it because if they are lying about exactly how we spread viruses, I think people should know, and it could stop the next fake pandemic.
Well, I definitely think it's a very interesting thing to sit and think about. And I think, again, like there's so many different aspects of that. I think obviously the virus was isolated to be created. So there's that. But I don't think since then they've been able to isolate it. You know, there's different coding and stuff that goes with all of these viruses, and to be able to sit back, and that's another thing for them to sit back and be like, okay, this is this variant and this is this variant, like for them to do that and have that turnaround so fast.
How about to turn around a test that can indefinitely, you know, tell you when the virus is that new? Yeah.
It's just like, it doesn't make any sense. And that's where we have to start asking these questions, like why, like where did this information come from? What are the things that you're doing to get to this result? And we're not doing that. But I don't think that we will be able to ever isolate the COVID thing again. And yeah, viruses aren't as easy to catch. And it's like, I have a friend who's a nurse in the hospital. She's like, as long as you're not licking doorknobs or touching things and licking your hands, like you're fine. Like, you know, just tell your kids to stop sucking on the doorknobs. And I'm like, okay, cool. But like for me, I know there's so many things that come into play when your body is such a magical machine. And if your body's not running at optimal levels, like there's so many things that can suppress it. Having smoke filling your area, like can suppress your immune system, the food you're eating, stress levels, the environment, the products you bring into your home. Like there's so many different things, and that can be out of whack at any different point.
How about traumas? I mean, we talked about like them using trauma and fear, right?
Well, and that's a stress. That's where your adrenals.
That's a stress. So if you're stressing people out to that level, how do you think that their body is going to respond to a virus?
I don't watch like I canceled my cable. I do not watch cable at all. And like I have streaming services like Netflix and stuff like that.
I still watch Fox News sometimes, you guys.
I watch like Newsmax, but I like just did that the other day as I'm getting like a glutathione IV in my arm. But there's like been the writer strike, so there's freaking absolutely nothing on. So I was watching like I was watching the morning show, which is annoying, on Apple TV, and they're going through like the whole pandemic, and I found myself feeling like I was suffocating, like watching this and like them going through it and them having like the plexiglass, like whether you feel like you've been traumatized or not, and you don't feel like you have, there's been these little seeds that have been planted in your brain of fear mongering and trauma and death and devastation when it comes to COVID, and we're never ever going to cellularly get over that. Ever. So you can't tell me that doesn't wreak havoc on the body.
I will. I would like to think that I will recover from that.
Me feel bad for some of the people. Like I bounce back and forth. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, if I see someone wearing a mask this late, I should really like say something to them. Like you really need to do something here. But then it's like, I also feel really bad. They're genuinely still scared.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where you hold compassion. You're like, okay, if that's what makes them feel safe, then
however,
then
we just talked about this before. It's that ignorance or like that level of fear that, you know, was projected on them that makes it harder for the rest of us, right? When we're trying to fight for our freedoms because we actually know the facts.
Yeah. And it's not like a judgmental thing. It's just like,
dude, take it off. You don't have to do it. Trust us. Yeah. Trust us. Come with us.
Yeah, I'm not coming up to you and licking you in the mouth. Like, I'm not just going to do it. First of all, that's disgusting. Second of all, it's like invasion of personal space. But like, you know, viruses are transmitted through spittle. Like that's how it is. But like, you're not going to get the likelihood of you catching a virus if I actually like spoke and like we're sitting like I mean, come on, let's be realistic.
I mean, I sat next to you. You had COVID 2 weeks ago. I was with her every single day. I didn't get COVID.
Yeah, and when your daughter came in here sick, I didn't get sick. She's coughing up everywhere.
I don't get sick from my kids ever.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
I think the whole like terrain idea is so important there, because then you're like, okay, that's how I went through COVID, was like, well, I'm going to stay healthy and stay optimal as much as I can, because I feel way more confident going to the grocery store with all these sick people, because it's like, I've been taking care of myself and I'm positive and I'm not fearful of the virus. I felt so confident about never being fearful of catching it, of that. Just, I feel like that kept my health up. And I just wish other people could understand that, it's like the mindset thing. If you're going to stress about getting sick all day long, you're probably going to be more likely to get sick.
Yeah, I want to learn way more about this theory. I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole.
The End of COVID by Alex Zeck, Zeck. I don't know if you all follow him on Instagram or Twitter. He's great. His whole family speaks out.
That sounds familiar.
But he did a something called The End of COVID, and it's got all these different pieces you can watch. And I'm pretty sure that Andy Kaufman and Tom Cowan, the people who have really kind of spearheaded this part of the rabbit hole, they lay it all out there, and he's very passionate about this topic. So I encourage anyone to go look up The End of COVID if you want to learn more about it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing that tonight, because hashtag Netflix sucks.
Yeah, baby.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so great. We've held you on for almost an hour and a half here.
And I feel like
there's so much more that I want to talk to you about, like flat earth and all of the things, but we'll have to have you come back on for that, because that's been a great debate in my relationship.
I would love to have that conversation as like just the primary topic of the interview, because I don't really know anything about it and I want to know more.
I was trying to explain to her the firmament.
I mean, like, I go as
Antarctica thing.
The furthest I go with this is that we never landed on the moon, and like that the whole,
it's in the
people are there. I'm like, it's like inevitable. You're almost there already.
Yeah.
We're indoctrinating her now.
It's fine.
Well, Justin, thank you so much for being on with us. We're definitely going to have you back. So just text me and let me know when you're available, so we can continue the flat earth conversation.
We can do a couples counseling flat earth episode.
I might have to like muzzle my Andrew and like just like make sure he's sober and not had like some whiskey, because he gets super annoying.
Wow.
And he just gets.
I may be not debating, but I think I'm going to have like a discussion. I finally found like a pilot or a scientist, someone who actually talked to me. I kept finding trolls and angry people that are just going to be a waste of time. And I think I finally found someone level-headed that's going to talk with me about it. So hopefully that's coming soon.
Oh my gosh.
Keep us posted.
Yeah, he actually just got called out to like review this video too. It's on his Instagram.
You sent that to me earlier.
Shout out your social media so people can follow you real quick.
Yeah, you can find me at Justin_WeAreChange. And I'm on Facebook, Justin Robert, which is my middle name. And We Are Change Orlando on YouTube, Rumble, and everything else you can think of.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. We'll be talking to you soon. We appreciate you, Justin. This was awesome.
Thank you all so much for having me. We'll do it anytime. It was my pleasure.
Yeah.